Well, first of all, Maruf, your assumptions about the nature of American-Indian intelligence collaboration, I can assure you, Walter's spot on. We have a huge intelligence exchange with India. Your assumption as to why the United States did not share the information that you allege came from David Hadley are also wide of the mark. You have to remember we are also a nation of laws, just like you are, and that Hadley has to be tried and put in, and compromising evidence in the course of a judicial procedure. So
that's not true. Hadley's information was not passed on because he was a double agent.
This is
you know
simply
that
not
as well
true.
As I do.
This is not true. If you go and sit down with your own intelligence authorities, I think you will find that there has been a massive transfer of all of Hadley's, of what Hadley testified to. I believe it's exactly, but I think your other question.
Ambassador, let me ask you this question. If there was to be an attack of the scale that happened on 26/11 in Mumbai on American soil, and 170 Americans had been killed in that, and there had been an Indian person, Indian citizen who had carried out the reconnaissance, had been the mastermind, I want to ask you, how far would have America gone to get access to that person? And would America have called lack of access to that person double crossing? And the reason this question needs to be asked today is simply this, because we are at that moment of great inflection where the American president is giving a number of global lectures on the issue of terrorism. I began by saying that I sense a certain amount of helplessness in Obama, but where was the sincerity in the past?
The sincerity, we're talking specifically about the Hadley case.
Yes, we are.
And I just think we're going to have to disagree about the depth of our exchanges on the intelligence extracted from Hadley. It's my very clear understanding that this was a complete and honest transfer of information. We did not hold out, and we didn't do it because we are hiding one hand behind our back. You don't agree. I don't agree with your assessment. I think mine is fact-based, and I think yours is assumption-based.
No, it's absolutely not. There is evidence about Hadley's role, which is very factually put out, but I think we can agree to disagree on that.
Good.
Yes, sure.
All right. Now, but the second issue, the more complex issue, is on what basis will the United States and India go forward in dealing with the evident threats that al-Qaeda and other radical groups pose not only to you, but to us?
Yes.
And I'd like to argue with you that the targeting of al-Qaeda will continue to be a top American intelligence and military priority.
When after you withdraw from Afghanistan?
And we will do it. We will continue to be involved in dealing with al-Qaeda, whether we're physically with troop units in Afghanistan or not. Al-Qaeda will remain at the very highest levels of our targeting. And it will take place across the board, whether in the Khorasan bombings of just several days ago, an al-Qaeda surrogate, or whatever other manifestation of al-Qaeda, that will be a higher American priority.
Ambassador, I'd like to be, once again, I'd like to say I'd like to believe what you're saying, but it's difficult to take it at face value because.
Can I jump in here?
I think yes, Dr. Anderson. Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
I totally agree with the ambassador, but there's an additional reason why I think that there's going to be high-level U.S. concern for events in that part of the world, even after, quote unquote, the U.S. troops leave Afghanistan. In that Khorasan, al-Qaeda, ISIL are increasingly attacking Western targets, including American targets. I suspect that's going to continue, and that's going to arouse public sentiment in this country and political sentiment. There's no doubt that the beheading of the two Americans had an enormous effect. I suspect one that may have surprised the people inside ISIL, though I don't know that. But I think this is going to be a kind of reaching too far that's going to impact in the United States and have a political influence in keeping us focused on that part of the world.
But I do think the one respect in which I think you're probably correct is that if you are judging America's attack on al-Qaeda by, for example, the number of drone strikes, Americans have come to recognize that drones are a weapon that giveth and taketh both. And you don't want to overuse it. In the case of Pakistan, for example, it's caused an enormous backlash in Pakistan. And so while drones have been tremendously effective in taking out top al-Qaeda leadership in Pakistan, they've also had a huge unexpected kind of backlash. In Somalia and Yemen, the United States has cut back the number of drone strikes. And so it may be that this war against al-Qaeda is not going to look exactly like it looked over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. That doesn't mean the United States doesn't view al-Qaeda as a threat.
That's presumably, James, because America has lost interest in the region, because America is on the verge of a withdrawal. And America would like to once again outsource the problem to the ISIL.
If I can put it this way, America would like to spend a lot less time in the region. That's why Obama keeps talking about a pivot to Asia, which he can't execute, because it turns out that the demands of terrorism, the threats in that region, are things you can't walk away from.
So then, Richard, you admit that, on the one side, the Pakistan army is locked in with the... You wanted to comment on that?
No, I'm listening to your statement of assumption.
Just look at the situation. I mean, I completely agree with you that you're saying America would like to spend a lot less time. But when you enter into a region, you come in with a commitment saying you want to work for the Afghan people, you want to put them back on their feet. When you enter Iraq, you say we want to put the Iraqis back on their feet. When the trouble persists and when it goes out of hand, you essentially say that, it is for the people to solve. But what is the legacy that you leave behind? And I'm just, the legacy is this, that you have, for example, in Pakistan, you have a very active Haqqani network. You have an ISI which controls the Haqqani network, which has moved into Waziristan. You have the Pakistan Taliban, which is strong. You have the Afghan Taliban, which has links with the Haqqani network. You have the Lashkar-e-Toiba, by the way, which carried out the Mumbai attack, killed many Indians, 165 Indians and 6 Americans as well, on our soil, which is flowering. There is no action against the main perpetrator of 26/11. To all of this, my question to you, Richard, and to James, is why did America turn a blind eye? We want to understand from you today that if we are to cooperate with you in any way in the global war on terror, how do we vouch for your own sincerity? That's my question.
But I think your strategic logic suggests that the US should now start a war with Pakistan with the goal that would ultimately be regime change.
Certainly not. What I'm saying is you realize that you have actually been promoting the same forces who you claim to fight. You have been promoting and working through the same forces who you seek to, you claim to fight. After all, President Musharraf had openly said that billions of dollars of American assistance was used to fund the same people who you claim to fight, which is the Lashkar-e-Toiba. And he justified it, didn't he, Maruf, when he said that, we follow this process. President Zardari said we actually use terrorism as an instrument of our state policy. We want to know, and all our audience there wants to know, what do we view this whole global war on terror for? Because if you, obviously America would want India to be part of this global war on terror in some form, I presume, at least in the South Asian region, but to what extent can we get involved?
You have a highly sophisticated audience, and a sophisticated audience will know that this sort of war is dirty and involves many, many shades of grey. I think you want us to move back to a sort of black and white George Bush view of the war on terror.
Not at all.
And that is what we have learnt does not work. And we see the president attempt a limited strike in the Middle East. Nothing on the scale of what was attempted in Iraq and Afghanistan. Because he does not want to sink himself into another major war.
Richard, we have a very sophisticated audience which will understand that a sophisticated man called Bruce Riedel, himself, who has been advising your government, has himself said that the entire Syrian Taliban leadership, including Mullah Omar, is being protected and lives in Quetta under the patronage of the ISI. So we present before you, and I want an answer from you on this. Here's a contradiction. You speak one language, but you do absolutely another. And that worsens the situation.
But again, where does your strategic logic lead? I don't think that Bruce is suggesting that we should simply obliterate Quetta.
No, 1 second. That's a gross overstatement. I never said that. I said, why do you seek to work with those individuals who are basically outsourcing terror, who are the terror outsourcing operation of the world in that region?
Now, I represent New York University, not the CIA, so it's not my choice. But I think that the US government is attempting to limit this conflict, and as such, it is making unpalatable and difficult deals. The nature of counterinsurgency and counterterrorism, and in fact all of diplomacy, is that you make unpleasant and difficult deals, and you make compromises, and that is what we are seeing here.
Will we see some of those go down now in the future, you think?
Yeah. Will we see some of the compromises?
Some of those compromises, which you call part of the dirty business that goes in the counterterrorism game, actually reduce. A sense of realism coming.
I suspect we're going to keep on making nasty deals and compromises.
Also, let me ask you
because
another
that's what the
question.
game is about.
All of your questions are assuming that President Obama considers India to be an important part of this alliance he's assembling. Now, at some level, that is absolutely correct, as I think any country that has any kind of significant Islamic population is true. But the immediate alliance he's creating is one that consists of North African and Arab countries. And I think Maruf is absolutely right in saying that the divergent interests among them are going to pose a big problem even for this small coalition that he's assembled. But I think he's probably speaking to different countries at different levels. The immediate conversation and the immediate alliance is not about South Asia, actually. It's about the Arab world and North Africa.
Well, why is it so, if I may ask you?
Sure, because we're talking about ISIS, that's why.
Because the current concern is ISIS.
Well, I think you asked that question as if the implication is the United States has lost interest in al-Qaeda. The United States can do more than one thing at a time, as India can. This speech was focused on a particular threat. That threat is ISIS. That threat is located in Iraq and Syria. That threat has caused the United States to assemble a coalition of 5 Arab countries with the hopes of others as well in that region. And I think that the real problems Obama is going to have will not be about how comfortable India does or doesn't feel with that enterprise. It's, for example, how willing Turkey is, how willing Egypt is to join that enterprise. That's a big problem.
Jim, I think you would agree if I added to your very important and accurate point a second one, and that is the president cast the net even wider.
Yes.
And he said, we're all in this together.
Yes.
Not just the immediate neighborhood, but all of us have a responsibility to cut off terrorist funding, the flow of terrorists, to engage in the ideological, to dry up the swamp in which this ISIS phenomena breeds. There, India has got a huge role to play with its deep cultural and political ties around the world. We all have a job to do, and I think that was the president's point, in addition to the operational point of organizing a coalition that deals with the first-line problem.
Ambassador, while you didn't agree with my earlier point about David Headley, but I don't know how you'll take my next 2 points, and that is the first.
Probably not well, yes.
Well, the first being that, you want peace, and I want to paraphrase from Little Heart. You want peace, you need to understand war. And I think America knows it better than most others because it's a country that has fought many wars. But I think there is a reluctance in America to understand the shortcomings and lessons of the last decade or more, where America went full hog in some cases and half hog in some cases, and had a situation as it has in Pakistan, and as is being brought out by the fact that, what do you expect America to do? Do you expect America to go to war all over again with Pakistan? We're not saying that, but there are lots of other levers of power. You'd know it as an ambassador that can be exercised against a country that is not abandoning its tryst with terror. And I think that's a problem with Pakistan, which because America is not addressed, and would you agree with me that that has been the central shortcoming of Indo-US relations, because India feels that if you don't move forward enough on that score, how are you really supporting our interests and where we need to open doors more widely for American interests in India? That you are a champion of.
You're absolutely right. I am going to have to respectfully disagree with you again. I think India and America's strategic concerns are much broader. We have to worry about how we deal with the fact that we have common problems in dealing with the rise of Chinese power. We have to worry about what's going to happen in Afghanistan after 2014. There are a wide variety of common and shared and extremely important concerns. The issue of Pakistan is even more complex for both of us, and that is we are observing the progressive deterioration of the Pakistani state. And how do you deal with that? If there is no state or a diminishing state, then where are the levers of power that you claim can be brought to bear? We have a frightfully complicated problem in finding allies to deal with adversaries. You have the problem, we have the problem. I've long admired India's forbearance recognizing there isn't a simple sort of military operation that deals with Pakistan, but it's a terribly complex process which is not assisted by direct military confrontation.
Ambassador, cut off the funding. Why does America continue to fund the problem? The problem in Pakistan is not the civilian leadership. The problem in Pakistan is the Pakistani military. The Pakistani military is a problem not restricted to Pakistan, extends to Afghanistan.
I've been in the presence of Indian officials for many, many years. I've never once had an Indian official tell me we should cut off our assistance to the Pakistan army. What you would like us to do is use the leverage we have to change behavior.
Yes.
Now, that's a much more complicated matter. I will argue with you. Look forward for a moment. Look at what happens after 2014 when we're less tethered to the maintenance of a presence in Afghanistan. You're going to see starker choices, but still we need to preserve entree, access, influence in Pakistan if the leverage we have is to have any useful effect for India's good interests and for our own.
Okay. Can I just take, yes, Dr. Anderson, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a point on what the ambassador has just said. We have a precedent when we, in fact, did cut off relations with Pakistan, and it worked much against our interests. This was after the Pressler Amendment, and we cut off literally all relations with Pakistan.
Yes.
And that was a disaster, I can tell you, because a time came several years later we needed to consult with them. We no longer knew who to contact on the other side of the military. We had, ruptured links between the bureaucracies. We lost influence.
But why such a sense of helplessness with the Pakistani military, Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson, you see, the Pakistani military, they say that we know how to handle the Americans very well. And there's this anecdote about General Zia-ul Haq, that when the first offer of money came, I don't know whether it was the Nixon administration, they offered him about $300 million for the Pakistani military, and he said that it was peanuts at that time. That's what he told the American president. And later, that offer in 3 or 4 years was doubled into several $1 billion. The Pakistani military has simply been negotiating very hard and doing an American-style negotiation with the Americans for more money. My question to you, sir, is why do you feel so helpless in the region that every single aspect of your military and strategic influence has to be rooted through a group which obviously is the center point of terror in the South Asian region?
But the proposal made a few minutes ago would totally, destroy any influence we have in the neighborhood. If we want to have influence in the neighborhood, we have to have some contacts with them. And Pakistan is not a simple entity. There's a great deal of difference and diffusion of interest in Pakistan. For example, you have a military which is actually tougher on the Pakistan Taliban than was the civilian, because the Pakistan Taliban attacked military facilities and the military. And there is something of a ferment going on in Pakistan on how to handle what is, I think, increasingly recognized as a terrorist issue inside Pakistan. I think at the same time we don't want to lose any influence we have, as we did after 1991. For several years we had almost no influence at all,
right.
And it worked against our interests.
So I don't know. My own view on this is that it's a dangerous game. Don't you think it's a...
You'll get no disagreement from any of us.
But would you not, James, would you not want to get out of this dangerous game?
Well, so people have talked about that. People have said, let's just admit that Pakistan is not an ally. And there's some perhaps truth value in that. But the fact is, it's not easy to see how the United States can transact business in that very dangerous part of the world without Pakistan. And so it is true that neither bribery, nor blandishments, nor threats have had the effect the United States and India would like to have on Pakistan.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
I don't know what the leverage is you wish we were using.
No, can I come in? I've got a suggestion, and
yes,
Ambassador, Mr. Anderson would probably know the subject a bit better, but I've also looked at Pakistan very closely for decades now. My one suggestion is that financial arm twisting doesn't really work with Pakistan, because they have something called a 4G Foundation, which gives them about $20 billion every year through various resources that they control. So your $1.5 to $2 billion a year over a $7 billion 5-year package is really something which Pakistan can do without, at least the army can do without. I think what the army in Pakistan really responds to is public mood within Pakistan. They like to be seen to be popular to public opinion. And if public opinion turns against the army because of international isolation and arm twisting, I think that's a lever
Absolutely.
that you haven't exercised enough.
I think that's a good point. I'd just like to wrap up this conversation at this point. And the reason why I deliberately brought the divergence across the table is so that we can bring our point of view across to all of you. You are all very important people in your own right. And I think there are a lot of people in India who would like to see a stronger strategic relationship with America build up. And I think that might happen, but perhaps a little bit more on our terms. That's what people in India want to see. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you.